Good evening. First order of business tonight are the open session minutes of May 18th and June 4th.
First, I'm sorry.
Oh,
June
June 1st?
Yeah.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
right, it was the first.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for May 18th and June 1st.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, no public hearings tonight. The first matter of general business is Marcia Slominski, who's not here right now, so why don't we skip over that?
Is she coming?
The next two should be fairly quick.
Yeah.
Josh? Josh wants an entertainment license?
Actually, we have an artist that is scheduled to perform a week from this Thursday. Right now it's a one-time engagement, and we just wanted to come before the board and formally ask for permission or a permit for that one night, knowing that we haven't paid for an entertainment license in our past.
Right.
It's just going to be, this is a national level recording artist. He's on the radio. He's played at Fenway many times. And he has a band which he's not playing. It's just going to be Will Daly solo. And it looks like we're going to do it after town meeting. And we'll cut it earlier than, as early as we want to go to bed. I will think 11 o'clock.
So you're looking from 7 to midnight?
Basically, I doubt we can go till midnight. The bar's open till midnight, but I can't imagine we'd go past 11 or so. It's a pretty mellow night. We just wanted to make sure we...
And then you think maybe you might come back?
Maybe. He's based out of Boston. He travels nationally, and I'm not looking to do a live music series or
Right.
get into the live music business.
Yeah.
At least not in that venue full time, but if there's ever an opportunity for a national level artist or a very popular regional. But yeah, we're not looking to do band night or anything like that.
Okay,
And this will be just, he'll be solo.
okay. Questions? Questions? Any questions on that? Seeing none, I'll have a motion to vote on the application for an entertainment
What's the date on
license.
it, John?
It'll be Thursday, June 24th.
I'll make a motion that we grant a license to Moe's for Thursday, June 24th for a live entertainment license from 7 to 11.
Second.
You all right with that?
Yeah, we can make it work. I gotta leave town meeting early, I gotta leave town meeting.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. You're done.
Patty Marshall's here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Marcia, you're here now. You want to come up and tell us what the railroad quiet zone is all about?
Like I said, let me introduce myself for I'm Marcia Slominski, and I live on Laurel Avenue here in town. And I've noticed recently that the train horns seem to be louder than in the past. Actually, they last between 96 and 110 decibels several times during the day and night. I'm also pretty sure that any future residents of the potential redeveloped Eagle Mill will not like this disruption. So I'm here to ask that the Select Board make the request to the Federal Railroad Administration that the two downtown rail crossings be officially designated quiet zones. I've also printed off.
And could you just, for anybody, where those two railroad crossings are?
Main Street and West Center Street,
Okay.
and also West Park Street and Marble Street.
Okay.
You guys have to request this from the federal authority. A citizen can't do it. So,
And in a nutshell, what does that do? Just make them lower their decibels?
no, there are several choices, actually, and it's laid out
Okay.
here. Either because we already have the crossings there, the
Yeah.
barriers, it shouldn't be a difficult thing. But it's, I don't know if you've all noticed, it's too long, one short, one long, every time they go through a crossing. They have to-
No, we have the guy that gives us a little playback down at South Lee. when they go by there. He plays a song.
Nice. If it's not at 110 decibels.
No, because I'm not that close. It's over the, over the valley. I'll be absolutely honest with you. I have not read this. I just received it. The actual.
Oh, I printed it.
Yeah, I mean, we just got it in our packet, and I just got it tonight. I'd like to be able to read it and either come back to you or to the federal.
Well, it's actually, I'm notifying you that I'm requesting that you do this.
Okay.
Because it's,
So I think the next step, Madam Chair, would
Okay.
be to present a form of, there are 4 options, correct? So, present a recommendation to petition for one of the 4 options.
Okay.
Or not, I suspect you probably
you're
would.
right.
And we have those too? Oh.
I also emailed, and got the email response. I only did great, so.
Oh, here.
Cindy can make me a copy.
Thank you.
More.
I do have another question, because I run past it every day. Who's responsible for cutting the grass in front of the abandoned homes in front of the Eagle Mill? Because it's, and I'm sure this just ticks galore, I just avoid it.
I mean, it's the owner.
We'll look into that.
But we will be, I was driving by myself tonight.
It's not very nice looking.
Understood.
The entrance or the exit to the town. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Steve Schmitter, sorry.
He's probably not here.
Okay. He's on behalf of the Masonic Lodge. They're looking for a one-day beer and wine. I think this is probably their yearly. And that is for July 25th. So the license has to go from the 24th to the 26th. It's from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. And it's held at their pavilion, which is on site. Wine and beer only. Any questions?
No, I'll make a motion to approve the special license for Steven Schmitter at the Masonic Lodge at the address, who's that? Tree Farm Road?
That's his home address.
Oh, 195 Laurel Street.
Evening Star Lodge, that's what they call it.
The Evening Star Lodge.
I don't know who this is going in.
Any questions about that?
No.
It's a yearly,
Sure,
once a year thing.
I
they do.
understand. Yeah. I'll second it, actually.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Board of Assessors. Is Karen here?
No, nobody's
No? Okay. Well, Karen Avaldes, who is one of our assessors, is up for reappointment. It's a 3-year term, and the board has asked us to reappoint her.
She's not here tonight?
She's not here today.
Okay. I have no objection. I don't know
Yeah.
anything about.
I'll make a motion to appoint Karen Aval to the Assessors Board for another 3-year term.
Then I'll second it.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
She's been on the board for a long
Yeah.
time.
She used to work for the state, too, so. Temporary sign permit, Tom Finnegan, Knights of Columbus, for their road toll.
I don't think she's going to be.
I don't think anybody's here, right?
No, this is for one of the rolled toes, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We'll have a look on it, but
I'll make a motion to approve the temporary sign permit for the Knights of Columbus, right down here on Main Street for their road toll event.
I'll second it.
any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Kathy, you're next.
I think it's so awful that every time you say, call for a vote, I want to say aye. But at any rate, I'd like to start off with just thanking people. Jack McQueen, Sean, if I mispronounce your last name, okay.
Perfect.
Jim Warner, Colleen Cordy, Bill Hall, and myself for taking the time on Saturday morning to cut down all the overgrown vines at the new parking lot on Marble Street. It was quite the adventure, especially with those big fat vines that went round and round. But it was fun, it was a good job. So I told you last time that I was going to review what we did for the community center so that people would know. And I think it's, good to bring everybody up to snuff since it's one of the things on the warrant for the town meeting next week. So we started with talking about a community center because we had done the open space and recreation plan, and in doing that, we had to have people, we met right here 2 years ago to do that, but actually 2 years, but 5 years ago, because we have to rewrite it now. But on the top of the list, and we had papers all along the wall here saying, what would you like for the town? And again, community center showed up again. So once the Lee Youth Commission had done its work and due diligence on our five parks here in Lee, we said, why don't we challenge ourselves to deal with the community center, get it off the ground? So we said, okay, well, where the heck is there land in Lee? So thanks to Matt Putton at SK Design, let me see, I can put that up there and not knock anybody off the head. Okay, in the blue dots, I'll indicate town property. We looked at all of them. You can see when we put little X's or whatever, that they were too small or they were in a floodplain, that type of thing. The best area was 300 Stockbridge Road. That's town property. It's 171 acres, all right? With that, there were also things, the downside was that it wasn't in the center of town, it didn't have water or sewer, that type of thing. But we said, okay, let's just look at it for now. So with that done and saying, okay, we've looked at a piece of property, the next thing we did, and Janet, you correct me if I'm wrong, is that we looked at, well, what would we like for a community center? So we were told, go for the gold. And that's what we did. We went for the gold. So here we have a 61,000 square foot building that would house a sports complex that would have 2 regulation size courts that could be used for basketball and indoor soccer, volleyball, whatever. There would be like a classroom and a fitness center and physical therapy here. I can't read what this says, sorry. Mechanical, the locker room, a community room, a kitchen. Here would be the entryway, climbing wall, lobby, conference and cafe kitchen type of thing. And then over here would be an aquatic center where there would be competition, diving well, splash park therapy, pool, locker rooms, showers, conference rooms, and offices. So we said, okay, well, we'll look at that. So we've been looking at that, and then we looked at, what would the price be? How are we going to manage this? What are we going to do with this? So we were lucky enough to have Brian Hallett from the Pike Company do an estimated conceptual budget for us that came out to, you have it in front of you, I did just the breakdown. I had sent it to you several weeks ago, but the breakdown to the penny of what this thing would cost and what is, I forgot, what would be included and what would be excluded within that budget. And I think it came up to $21 million or something like that.
Almost 22.
Yeah, almost 22. But it does not include the monies needed for the architectural design. These are just conceptual renderings, okay? So that there's still money that has to be for an architect and an engineer, that type of thing. With this also, we have the, what it would look like outside. So even though, we talked with the abutters right at the beginning before we even did anything with a survey or whatever to find out their feelings because they had been there for many, many years and this has all been vacant for a while. So some were okay with it, given certain things. Others were, no, it's, we've been there. And I can relate to it having been in my home for 73 years and giving it up for that eco project. And as Jane said, yeah, somebody should be out there weed whacking. But at any rate, we went through that. With these two things done, we then said, well, there's got to be a feasibility study. So we went to the town and they did appropriate $30,000 for a feasibility study. Within that study was a survey, and the result of the survey, it told the amenities inside and outside and what, like the priorities were. Then there was the results of the survey. There was a development plan and a demographic profile of the town of Lee. Then we said, okay, that's fine, now where do we go with this? And then we were lucky to have, so Berkshire Regional Planning did that for us. Then we asked Randy Kinnis. Yes, thank you. I got to ask Janet. Yeah. It's tough to get old, but that's all right. To help us with a business plan. So we did a business plan, and again, I had sent that to all of you with 3 different scenarios, what it would look like, what if we had so many people, how much would the fees be, that type of thing. And again, coming up with an estimate like $18 million for the project, not leaving anything out. The Lee Youth Commission did say, well, maybe we need to do this in 2 phases. But as we're doing this, we need to do the whole thing to know exactly what the money is and what we're doing, because it's not going to be, any less expensive to do it in 2 phases. Because you'd have this half for the first phase and this for the second phase. And what you would have to do is do each step. So whatever we had to do here, we'd have to redo over here. And according to the people at Pike Company said, you are not going to save a heck of a lot of money doing it in separate phases. You're better off doing the whole thing. But again, we still have to tweak this. This is still conceptual, and everybody needs to know that it's just a conceptual drawing. Now I'm losing my train of thought here.
Could I just interrupt you for a
Yes,
minute?
yes.
So this from the Pike Company that you
Yes,
gave us?
yes.
I've never seen this before.
Okay,
So-
no, that piece of paper I just did for you
Okay.
tonight, but
So-
I sent an email, okay, to Chris.
Okay.
That has the whole thing. And
Okay.
the reason I did it like that, I didn't want to print it all out because it's got their logo on it, and then there's
That's
blue
okay.
paper. I would have wasted a lot of paper and ink, so I said, no, let me just cut and paste this.
So what we're talking about here is not a budget for operational. This is
No.
just a budget for building.
Yes, yes.
Just
And
like
then- Because
clear.
at the bottom it says, on that second page, or near the bottom, it says what's excluded within that budget.
Exclusions, yeah.
Exclusions,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah. So that.
I haven't looked at it yet.
Okay, and as I said, there wasn't the money put in there in that budget for the architectural and design for the schematic rendering, because this is just conceptual. And then
Oh, I see it right here.
SK design again with the help of Matt. And then make sure this is not upside down. Okay, this is actually Stockbridge Road. And this is the building. There are 100 regular parking spaces and 6 handicap accessible spaces. It's showing where it's located in terms of the different houses and where the entryway is and where they're going to put the water and sewer lines, okay? And I just have to find out where to put that rest. Okay. Don't ask me any questions about the water and sewer line. I'll have to have Matt come in and tell you because I have no clue. And I don't pretend to have a clue. But let's see. I don't even know how it goes. Wait a minute, let me stop. I could read something right side up. So. This is the site plan that was done by, not Matt himself, but his company, SK Design. And it shows the water is going to come from via Franco and via Bondi, where they're going to do the sewer line and water line. It's showing where the entryway will be, parking, and the building. And again, some of the houses here. And somebody else had done the, what does it say here? The property line survey was done prior to SK doing this design. SK did not do, see where the bulb lines are?
Okay.
They did not do that, that was already there, you know. And as I say, if you need answers for this, I would ask Matt to come and talk with you because I honestly don't know.
As of tonight, though, this really has nothing to do with the article that's in the town meeting.
But just to let people know that we're still going and, you know, when we're asking for more money, it's because it costs so much that the finance committee really wanted us to do one more step, which would be the market analysis. Who's going to use this building and how long? We don't want to build a building and then it's vacant. So that's part of that money. And the second part is the financial feasibility. Can the town afford this, or how would the town pay for it? Where would grant money come from? Where would donations come from? And that's part of the $20,000 that's on the warrant. Any questions? Oh, that's good, because I don't know if I have the answer. Okay,
So you've done one more step.
Yeah, yeah. So, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Okay.
We're hopeful for a building that will be used and loved by everybody. The town will be and surrounding towns as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Can I just do this?
Yeah, can you tell us what's on the warrant for this?
What's on the warrant? There's 2 different cards on the warrant. It's under the,
Can you go up there and tell me?
yeah.
It's actually on the website. The warrant is on the website for everybody, the town of Lee.
The warrant article, Kathy, you were just explaining was for $20,000.
Yes.
You're going to do a market analysis
Yes.
and a financial feasibility study about whether or not the town can afford this. Yeah, that's
Where would the money come from?
the town.
The town.
Yeah.
I think there's people in this town, like, Kathy, I love you, you did a lot of work for this. The way I feel is, there's 2 fitness centers in Lee. You put these people out of business.
Oh, no. Well, I'm sorry.
No, you know what, Janice, I understand what you're saying. Other people have brought that up, Kathy.
Yeah.
We're not anywhere near
No.
getting there.
Can I just say, I am working with Justin Souls about that. We're not, because the Legal Commission has already said, we are not going to put anybody else out of business.
Okay.
So I'm working with Justin and his wife.
Okay.
And they have the site plan and all of that.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's probably what might be included in the market analysis
Right.
to some level, what do we already have? That's part of the market analysis. What do we already have readily available in town? What does it make sense that there's a need for? And then kind of fine tuning the scope of what your project is, because what you keep saying is that it's conceptual. You don't have the details hammered out yet, and these are the next steps to kind of get there. Yeah.
Who's going to do that analysis?
Well, normally it has to go out to bid. I don't know about the price, Chris.
Okay, and you mentioned Berkshire Planning was involved in something. Did they come up with some kind of report or something?
No, they just let us to another person. There was another, the last meeting, remember I gave you a couple of pages of all the different people I contacted
Yes.
that were gonna do the analysis. All right, we got three prices. One company for $20,000, another $35,000, and one for $120,000.
Okay.
Those were the three quotes that we received.
There were slightly different deliverables with
Yes,
those quotes too,
absolutely.
right?
Yes, yeah.
So it wasn't
And the
just
one- Yeah, the one for $20,000, she kept stressing, it's minimal $20,000.
right, yeah.
So I'm not sure where we are with that, Kathy, whether it would have to formally go out to bid or not.
Yeah.
So that everybody's bidding on the same,
Right, I don't know.
okay? So that'd have to be worked out. Okay. All set? Okay. Bob, you're up.
Thank you. I've done a prepared presentation to hopefully keep it as brief as possible. Thank you for the opportunity to address the issue of the proposed PCB dump in Lee. It's been the source of much worry, consternation, anger, outrage, and fear since the announcement of the signing of the rest of the river in January of 2020. And it's weighed heavily on the residents of this town ever since. It's been described as the #1 issue in Lee, and I agree. The people here in this room and the voters of Lee are well aware of the facts surrounding the issue and how we got here. I'm not here to vilify or castigate any individual involved in how we arrived in our present position. I'm here to do a hopefully brief review of the events since January of last year, since very much has changed since then. I ask that when anybody speaks, we all listen to each other attentively and respectfully, as what is said tonight is of great significance to all of us. In January of 2020, the rest of the river comprised of the General Electric Corporation, the Environmental Protection Agency, the 5 towns of Sheffield, Great Barrington, Stockbridge, Lenox, Lee, the City of Pittsfield, the Audubon Society, and the Housatonic River Initiative.
And beat.
Sorry?
And beat.
Right. HRI announced an agreement, the result of long negotiations and dialogue, to come up with a solution for dealing with the removal of the PCBs from the Housatonic River, deposited there over decades by the GE Corporation. In making the announcement, it should be noted that the one group that did not sign on to this agreement was HRI. When I saw the headlines announcing the agreement, I was briefly elated, thinking that a way forward that would work for all involved was finally reached. My hopes were dashed almost immediately. It was apparent that this was, in my opinion, an attempt to sell a less than adequate cleanup of the river to the public. The premise for the formation of the rest of the river has been to bring together the municipalities and others to craft a plan for an effective cleanup. They were to work together, and negotiate a solution to a decades-long problem. They met one time as a complete group. Thereafter, they were divided, and I use the word groomed for what was to ultimately be presented: a preconceived cost-saving gesture at a cleanup with a predetermined ending. It would lead to a savings for GE, hundreds of millions of dollars in transportation costs, a reduction in the goal as to the amount of PCBs to be removed, and a vastly diminished responsibility, if not absolution, for GE at the end of the project. I believe the dump being located in Lee was always part of the plan, and it falls far short of what's been discussed and understood for decades. It fails to remove all hazardous materials from Berkshire County and imposes what we are here to discuss tonight. A toxic waste dump imposed on the town of Lee against the will of the vast majority of its citizens. Citizens blindsided by the signing of agreement that they believed and were told would never be signed without their consent. In January of 2020, the response of the majority of the citizens of Lee was swift, direct, and clear. They wanted no part of a dump in Lee, not for $25 million, not for any amount of money. I give you the following evidence. At multiple informational meetings held in various towns, scores of residents spoke out against the plan. I attended those meetings, and there was near unanimous opposition to locating the dump in Lee. The only proponents were sitting at the table, representatives of GE, the EPA, and the rest of the River Committee. The contrast in what was being said by the public and what was being said at those tables was stunning. The rest of the river agreement was negotiated behind closed doors. No one is arguing that executive sessions meetings are quite legal or even necessary when crafting agreements concerning finances. However, the citizens of all municipalities involved were kept in the dark by the various select boards and/or their representatives as part of this process. The citizens of Lee, the citizens of Berkshire County, had no idea what was in store for us. We had no part in a democratic process because there was none. We've been told everything we did was legal. That remains to be seen. But that is about as chilling a statement as I can imagine, given the attempts at justifying outrages through history using that phrase. The first truly measurable indication of Lee's displeasure with the agreement came in the town elections of last year, of 2020. There were 3 candidates. One, the incumbent, was one of the signers of the rest of the river agreement and had a fine record of public service. The other 2 candidates campaigned as being against the dump. When the votes were tallied, the incumbent lost the election, garnering less than a third of the vote. Better than 2/3 of the votes were cast for anti-dump candidates, with Sean being the ultimate victor. I'll offer yet another immeasurable indication of Lee's opposition to this agreement. Due to COVID, the annual town meeting was deferred until October 2020. There were 2 articles on the warrant related to the proposed PCB dump. One, Article 10, was to budget money to continue support for our relationship with the rest of the river. Amended at that meeting, the $50,000 allotted for this was instead to be utilized for legal fees to support the rescinding of the rest of the river agreement. It passed overwhelmingly. Article 16 called for the town to rescind the rest of the river agreement and renegotiate the terms that would not include a dump site in Lee. This also passed overwhelmingly with a 37-8 vote in favor of undoing the agreement. I should also mention that the members of the public supported this article, giving voice to their shared concerns. Many of us presumed we were back on track. We were wrong. In fall of 2020, a group of concerned citizens convened, some of them town representatives, some just concerned residents, none without a knowledge of events in the history of the GE-EPA saga over several decades, and all baffled as to the apparent lack of action by the then Selectboard. It was decided to hire an attorney to get answers as to why there was no movement on the town warrant articles. After weeks of back and forth, in January of this year, we were able to meet with the Selectboard, only to find that nothing had been done. And there was no intention to do anything. We were told that the board had no mandate, despite the events at the previous town meeting. When pressed to explain how 3 persons could consent to a toxic waste dump in a town of over 5,000 people, we were told that it was legal, and given a choice, they would do it again. This has resulted in a lawsuit filed in Superior Court against that board, who signed the rest of the river agreement. In the interest of transparency and full disclosure, I was one of the plaintiffs in that suit until I was elected last month. I consulted the state's Ethics Commission, and I've taken all steps to remove myself from the case and filed a disclosure form with the town clerk documenting all associated events. There's been an appeal filed by the Housatonic River Initiative with the EPA Appeals Board. Should this fail, the matter will be moved to federal court. HRI is not alone in this effort, and while the rest of the river plan for the work ends at the Connecticut border, the PCBs do not. HRI is joined by other parties in this struggle, which includes HEAL, the Housatonic Environmental Action League, the Berkshire Litchfield Environmental Council, and the Schaghticoke Indian Community, among other groups, all Connecticut-based. This is just another indication and more evidence that the proposed cleanup is more window dressing than a sincere, methodical, and deliberate operation to restore our river. There was public input. There was a public input period sponsored by the EPA. Unfortunately, it turned out to be a feigned gesture, as over 400 residents weighed in through phone calls, emails, and letters to let them know the dump was and is not wanted. I can't recall anyone speaking in favor of the landfill. Sadly, the EPA dismissed these communications out of hand and indicated its intention to move forward with the dump. Did I mention lawn signs? There are literally hundreds of lawn signs throughout the town protesting the Rest of River and the dump. They are just another indication of the vehemence and determination of a citizenry wronged by a federal agency, a corporation focused on the bottom line, a local government that's failed to represent its constituents, and a state that's largely remained silent on this crucial issue. The citizens of Lee have and are mounting a valiant David and Goliath effort to reverse a wrong that we don't deserve. And by the way, I couldn't help but notice there are some new signs scattered about, posted anonymously. I don't know where they came from, whether it's an individual or a group. They encourage us to take the deal. It's peculiar, is it not, that what went from what was thought to be a thoughtful exchange of ideas, a constructive democratic process for developing an effective cleanup, has developed into a plea bargain. Take the deal or it'll be worse. Is that really who we are? It sounds like advice from a public defender to an innocent client wrongly accused with no legal recourse. Is this really who we've become? I'm pleased to report here that more than 2/3 of the voters in Lee say no. Finally, in May of this year, there was another race for a seat on the select board. My opponent was a 12-year veteran of the board, again, with a record of community service. He was also a signer of the Rest of the River Agreement, opening our town to the dump. Our positions on this topic could not have been more clear. This time, the results indicated that my opponent received 29% of the vote. My position has been clear all along. I'm against the dump. I received 71% of the vote. I'm grateful to all who voted in both these elections. If ever there was any doubt as to the wishes and wants of the residents of Lee, they are dispelled by the outcomes of these elections. It makes my job that much easier. I certainly do have a mandate. My task is crystal clear. Given the evidence conveyed, I dare say we at this table have a mandate. Which brings us to tonight, and I'd like to make a couple of personal appeals. Sean, you ran last year as an opponent of the dump. I don't think it would be inaccurate to say that you were elected, as was I, by voters who presumed you would be actively fighting against the dump. In all fairness, it surely would have been an uphill battle for you alone, given the positions outlined by the other two sitting members of the Select Board. You've said that you've looked into it and that we have no choice. On the other hand, you and I were 2 of the 37 who voted to rescind the agreement last October. I believe that took courage on your part, and I hope you'll see this as an opportunity to make good on what was expected and what generated so much hope in so many of our residents. Your idea of forming a committee to oversee the cleanup, while I believe is well-intentioned, is not why you're sitting in that chair. It is the firm desire and commitment of the voters to keeping a dump out of Lee that put us here. Patty, I was watching, and this is great, I was watching a news show a few weeks ago, and I thought of you. One of the panel members was John Meacham, one of our best-known living historians. What he said intrigued me. He said some of the greatest moments in United States history, even world history, came from leaders changing their mind. He used as one example Abraham Lincoln, who, while abhorring slavery, thought he could save the Union through compromise in that regard. Through experience and much personal conflict, he realized the Union could be saved only by abolishing slavery. He changed his mind, a radical departure from his original mindset. He used Ronald Reagan as an example, as his hatred of the Soviet Union and the communism and evil empire until Gorbachev came along. And then he reached across the wall came down, and so did the Soviet Union. And even not my favorite politician or president, but Richard Nixon, who one thing can be said that he did a good job on was opening relations with China. While imperfect today, we do have a relationship with them and we do have trade agreements. So changing one's mind can result in very positive things, and I hope you will do so, given the events over the last 17 months. Changing one's mind, however, is not the same as keeping one's agreements. If you're feeling any trepidation about having signed on to the rest of the river agreement and now reneging, look to the granddaddies of not keeping one's agreements, the EPA and GE. That we are all skeptical of this agreement is in part that we have little faith in what we're being told, given their track records over the decades. To both of you, I want to say this. I want very much to work with both of you to right this situation. To say that we don't like it, but we have to live with it, is not good governance. None of us was dragged out of our beds, kicking and screaming, and forced to sit in these chairs. We signed up for the job, and we've been chosen by our friends and our families and our neighbors to represent them. We enlisted to do our duty. And like all of those who enlist in these endeavors, we don't get to pick and choose our battles. We can't say, this one doesn't look winnable, I think I'll pass. We must take it on. We don't have to ask for permission, it's already been granted. It's been granted by the town meeting with full knowledge of how expensive it could be. And we will fight until we succeed, or if or until these same people, our constituents, indicate a change of heart on the matter. We are the pilots, our constituents are our navigators. They've set the course for us. We know where we should be going. It's time we did our jobs. That said, I'm prepared to make a motion, and if I get a second, we can continue this conversation. But before making the motion, I'm going to close with a quote from James Baldwin, a brilliant man who faced unimaginable challenges in his lifetime, yet gave us hope and wisdom and perspective to us now facing the challenges. Mr. Baldwin said, quote, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed that is not faced." With that, I make the following motion. Move that this board move immediately to implement Article 10 and Article 16 passed by town meeting in October of 2020. And I will briefly read them, they're very short. Article 10 reads as follows. To see if the town will raise or appropriate the sum of $50,000 for the purpose of retaining legal counsel to overturn the agreement that would result in a toxic waste dump in Lee, and exhaust all avenues to secure the removal of all PCBs from the Housatonic River with the assurance of safe transport to out-of-state facilities for such materials. Article 16 reads as follows. Motion to instruct the board, the select board, to rescind their support of the rest of the river agreement and renegotiate terms that shall not include a dump site in the town of Lee. Thank you all for your patience and for the opportunity of speaking with you.
So, may I ask, so, first of all,
Yeah.
does Cindy have a copy of your statement?
I'll give it to her right now.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, can I email it to you?
Sure.
All right, thank you.
So then, so did you just make a motion?
I just did.
Because what you did is you read the motions from our last town meeting.
Yeah, but no, my motion reads, move that this board move immediately to implement Article 10 and Article 16 passed by the town meeting in October of 2020.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I would second the motion for discussion purposes.
Okay.
And, I mean, first of all, is it, thank you, Bob. That was very well said. There's a lot that you've put out there. I think that, some of the questions that I have, is it true that there's a reduction in PCBs removed from the river? Because it was my understanding, and maybe I was wrong, that this cleanup actually calls for more cleanup than the 2016 permit.
My understanding is that the most they're going to take out of the river, the most we're going to get is about 40% of what's in there. And this conversation goes back way before 2016. This goes back decades when they were going to clean the river and take the majority of PCBs out of here. It's at any rate, it's an inadequate, at least in terms of the people I talk to.
I don't disagree with you. I think that there is definitely a question about whether or not the river will be swimmable and fishable after the cleanup. And I think that talking to a lot of people, I think that that's the biggest question that they have. Is this really going to clean up the river in its entirety? I don't have the answer. I suspect that no, it's not going to be a full cleanup of the river to make it an absolutely swimmable, fishable immediately after the cleanup.
I understand what you're saying, Sean, and that actually brings up, there have been people who have said there have been letters to the editor saying that the people who are against this agreement are looking for perfection. I don't think anybody is looking for perfection. I don't think perfection is achievable. I mean, I think it's kind of silly of looking at it that way. Mm-hmm. However, the cleanup that they are doing doesn't even begin to do what could be done, including removing all these materials from Berkshire County. We can't do anything about Berkshire County. If Great Barrington wants a dump, which of course they don't, they're welcome to it. I would encourage all our neighbors in other towns to do what they've done. They shouldn't have dumps either, but we can't do anything about that. We're talking about simply the town of Lee. But my guess is, and again, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an ecologist, I'm not a chemical engineer, I'm a layperson. And I've read what GE has said, I've read what the EPA has said, I also read what HRI has said, and all the reports associated with it, and this is a completely inadequate cleanup. It's window dressing, and worst of all, why are we agreed to take on the waste from 5 towns in the city of Pittsfield, bring it to our town? And I'm going to tell you, my opinion, this is just my opinion, if we say no, there's not going to be a dump in Berkshire County. Because I'm going to tell you, nobody in those other towns, I guarantee you, they never went to their residents and said, what do you think about a PCB dump in our town? $25 million. It never happened, and it never would. This whole plan, the whole structure for this is stunk from the beginning, and I don't believe it's sincere. And I think what we're doing tonight and what we've been doing for the last 17 months is exactly what GE wanted us to do. Where this is a page right out of the GE playbook. Let's argue amongst ourselves. Communities fighting communities, communities fighting within communities. We're doing exactly what they want us to do. But my goal here tonight is to keep a PCB dump out of Lee. That's all we can manage. That's all we can do sitting here at this table. The rest of it, I'm willing to sit down with all those towns and craft another kind of agreement. It just can't include a dump in Lee. I don't think there should be a dump in Berkshire County. I can't control that, but I can do everything I can to keep a PCB dump out of Lee.
I question whether or not us saying no will do what you say it will do.
Oh,
I sincerely question the fact that just because us, we take a vote here, that is going to say, okay, Lee, no dump. And that's where we're at this point. I don't see that happening, and this is what I've said before. It's not, again, I'm not happy about it. I'm not proud to be up here and having to lay this out, but that's something that terrifies me from a standpoint of what's best for the town, because if we say, okay, we want out at all costs, then we very well are probably likely going to be out of the agreement, out on our own. Okay, that's fine. I don't think that not everybody necessarily wants to be in the agreement, okay? But here's where we are. And saying that, okay, we say no, that stops the dump in Lee, I don't think is accurate.
But that's not what I'm saying. I'm absolutely not saying that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not even thinking that. What I'm saying is this is a battle that must be fought. And we talk, to say, oh, we looked into it, it could be $1 or $2 million. Oh, well, that's too expensive. Let's have a dump. That's not good. That's not good governance. That's not good governance. We have to. These battles are fought not only in courts of law; they're fought in the court of public opinion. This when you're going to see, if you're going to have GE and the EPA march into this town and tell 5,000 people, you have no choice. We're giving you a toxic waste dump and with waste from 5 towns in a city, and we're putting it in your town. And you know what? They are simply, that is news. That is New York Times worthy. That is Washington Post worthy. And I'm going to tell you something. That kind of governance, if a federal government and a multi-billion corporation can walk into a town of 5,000 people and tell them they're going to have a toxic waste dump, they are driving a stake through the heart of democracy. This is absolutely absurd that people in this town were left out of the process and must live with the toxic waste dump. It defies reason. Now, I'm not saying that this battle can be won, but I'm saying it must be fought. And we don't know you don't know where it goes, I don't know where it goes, but it must be fought. Because why does it have to be fought? Not because I say so. I'm sitting here because I had probably hundreds of people say to me, please run for select, because they say so. And because what I just read to you, there's an overabundance of evidence that people want this battle to be fought. And it's not what I say, and it's not what it's what our constituents say. They want this fought. When we hear from them, that it's not worth it, then we'll take another look at it.
Well, we may hear from some that think that, but that's yet to be seen. I think that you're right. There is a mandate against the dump. I think that's clear. But again, that's different than being able to stop it at this point. And I think that there are certain grave consequences that the town could face if we were to fight it at all costs. And that's the other thing. Another point that I think you made is that there was full knowledge of what the costs that would be incurred by the town during the town meeting vote to rescind. I'm not sure that anybody has a grasp about the full cost of what this could be, of what we could face here. I don't have that figure in front of me, and I don't know where you threw out $1 million or $2. I don't know where that came from. Could be, could not be. Again, I think the lack of action that you discussed is because we are legally bound by an agreement. It's not a question of, oh, we can simply make a motion, vote against it, and bam, it's done. This is a legal agreement signed by multiple towns, multiple agencies. As you know, as you well stated, it's not that simple. And there's this idea of renegotiation. You know, my understanding about the sequence of events that would take place if Lee were to pull out of this agreement is not that it would trigger renegotiation. There's no legal precedent that has been pointed to. There's no case law that I'm aware of that's been pointed to that shows that that's what would happen.
But Sean, that's not what I'm saying would happen. All I said was I would be willing to do that if that were to happen. But you're being quite honest when you say that you don't know. I'm telling you I don't know.
Okay.
But I'm telling you what has led us to this moment is so wrong and so anti-democratic. I've never seen, I'm 68 years old, I've never seen or heard of anything like this in my life. And I just think the battle has to be fought and see where we go. You don't know where it's going to go. I don't know where it's going to go. But I have a responsibility. I'm sitting in this chair because the people of Lee told me that this is what we have to do.
But we also have a responsibility to say what's in the best interest for the town. Even though there may be a mandate against this dump to fight it at all costs, we also have a responsibility to say, we don't want to go down that road. Maybe it's bad to go down that road. In fact, I have some more here I'd like to say, which is why I think it would be bad to go down that road. And, you know, we talk about removing ourselves from the agreement. We would be, okay, we're out of the agreement. That's what some people might want. We'll be out on our own. We'll be fighting this battle by ourselves. Now, there's something that, you know, I think that is important to put out there. This is the EPA's position about materials contaminated with PCBs at less than 50 parts per million. Yes, PCBs are toxic at any level, no doubt. I'm not disagreeing with that fact. But the EPA are the ones who make these rules. They're the authority on this material. I'm not, you stated you're not. The EPA says it's their position that soil is contaminated at concentrations below 50 parts per million if they found it on an industrial site anywhere in Lee, say, anywhere. They would not touch it. It's in the ground. They say that it's safe. They wouldn't dig it up. They wouldn't remove it. That's their position. Okay, we can disagree with that, but that's.
Where did you hear that? No way.
Please
Excuse me.
let us finish, and then you can have public comment, okay?
Again, we can discuss this or not, but that's my understanding of their position about 50 parts per million when it's in the ground at any site that they come across it. The fact that it's in the river changes that. This is a dynamic system. Water's churning it up. The aquatic marine, life is constantly exposed to it. That's the difference here. That's why it's got to come out of the river. So us fighting against that, once it's in the ground, now we're saying that no. My point is this: I don't think any court would agree with Lee against the EPA about what is safe and what isn't safe, because that's what we'd be saying. We'd be saying, look, the EPA's wrong here. This is toxic stuff. And I don't disagree with that. Just to be clear here, I'm not saying that I have the answers. I'm saying this is the EPA's position, and this is what we'd be fighting against at this point, and it's a losing battle. That's my point here. It's not, again, I'm not happy about it. I'm not excited about it. Those are the facts as I understand them.
And Sean, in response, again, I'm not a scientist or a chemical engineer, and I certainly am not going to sit down and debate with a an expert from the EPA about the science of this. Whether this is even legal, we don't know. That's being tested in court. We don't even know, it could be overturned in the court. We don't know. But the process that got us here, that got us into this agreement, is what we're really talking about. It's what was flawed, it's what was wrong. The people of this town, the people of Berkshire County had no say in this. There were some people there who weren't even members of boards of selectmen. They were just appointed representatives. So you had an individual going back to a board of selectmen in town with their narrative about what we should do. I know, I talked to selectmen in other towns. They go back with their narrative and they get one story. People in Stockbridge are being told, not people in Stockbridge, the select board in Stockbridge is being told, you got to go with this agreement. There are 3 dams in Lee. They're hot, volatile PCAs. The worst PCBs are in these 3 dams in Lee. And if one of those dams lets go, the people in Stockbridge are going to suffer. So the selectmen there go, oh, well, we have to do what's best for Stockbridge, so let's sign on to this agreement. The hell with to the people in Lee. Let's send all our stuff to them. I'm sure they're all delighted.
Well, it
that
wasn't,
there's going to be.
I mean, let's be clear too. It wasn't like the select boards in the surrounding town said, "Oh, this is a great spot in Lee." That was the EPA that chose that spot.
Well, yeah, and the EPA that led everybody right by the nose. Well, let's see. We could do 2 or 3, or should we just have 1? Oh, 1 sounds better than 2 or 3. That's the logic that was used.
I don't disagree with you, and it's not a question of whether or not I want the dump. I definitely don't want the dump. And if I have the power to stop it, I would. I'm just telling you that this isn't going to do it. And that's why I can't go along with it. It's not something that I see in the best interest of the town. Now, why do we want to stay in the agreement? Everybody talks about how terrible PCBs are. We can't get rid of them. We're going to end up stuck with them the rest of our lives. Okay, that may very well be, but there's an aspect of this agreement, and the EPA is going to have a contest of sorts where they're going to bring in technologies that people say, hey, we've got this technology, we can remediate PCBs. They're going to test them out on this material that we're talking about here. That's something, if anybody wants to stop landfills in the future, that's something that is worth this staying in this agreement, and I think is of value to, again, Lee pulls out, we don't have any involvement in that. This committee that I'm trying to form and that I have had interest for, of people who are willing to look at this thing, that's what it's targeted in. It's oversight, and it's looking at renewable technologies. And if we stay in the agreement, that's something we can have an involvement with. We can bring people up to say, hey, here's a technology that we think could work. And if they find efficacy with those technologies, the EPA funds it, funds research and development of these things. That's good. This isn't all bad. Again, this idea that, okay, it's not. It's not. It's not all bad. You can.
Again, Janice, could you wait until we're done, and then you'll excuse me, I can't hear when you're all talking, but you're welcome, you will have say. Let us finish, okay? Did you lose your train?
Yeah, a little bit, but if you've got something to say, you can go.
I don't have anything. I think everybody knows where I stand. You've mentioned 17 months. That's a long time. I put 8 years of my life into this. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a chemist. None of those things. I'm just a selectman who's worked for the town for 40 years to the best of my ability to do the best I can for the people who live in this town. Just a minute, Tim. I see your hands up, but I don't think Sean's done either.
Well,
Letting you know that I'm
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And you know, Tim's part of the HRI group. They have an appeal filed, and again, that's great. We're not getting in the way of that.
Right.
If you guys are able to make a win out of this, great. But the fallback position is this agreement. If we get out of this agreement, we have no fallback position. We could face drastic legal consequences that we just have no idea what the extent is. It is a losing battle, and there is a financial implication to the town, to the taxpayers, that we don't even know the extent of. How long could this take? And that for those reasons, I can't go along with it. And it's not something, again, that I'm happy about. It's not something that I'm enjoying being a part of. But it's where we're at, and that's really all I have to say.
Okay.
If I may just say one more thing, and then if you want to open it up, it's up to you. Let me just say, Sean, I understand what you're saying, but much of what you're saying is projection and speculation as well. We don't know what is going to happen if we back out of this agreement. We don't know because nobody's ever even explored that. The way to do it, I mean, we have a mandate from the citizens, the people who put us in these chairs. We have a mandate. So let's do what they've asked us to do. It'll either be a long, drawn-out process, or maybe we'll know immediately that we're doing the right thing, or that we're making a mistake. But something has to be done. We have to move forward.
But I guess then that begs the question: what's the plan? What's our plan after? Okay, we say, yep, we're done, we're out. What's the next step? I don't know. I don't have any answers. I don't have a plan.
My thought is that we write to the rest of the river agreement and say, we've reevaluated. We have a new board of selectmen. We've reevaluated our position. After hearing from our constituents, we realize a mistake was made. We know a contract has been signed. And by the way, GE makes contracts right and left, and contracts are broken all the time. And this is just an absurd relationship that we have with them and the EPA at this point. The contracts are broken all the time. And as far as them being able to afford this cleanup, and that the only way we can do it is to remove 40% of the PCBs from the river, and the only way we can afford it is to have a dump in Berkshire County. On March 10th of this year, GE sold its airline leasing division. I don't know what that means. Maybe it's exactly what it sounds like. They sold its airline leasing division for $26 billion. $26 billion. When I was a kid, I couldn't wrap my head around $1 million. A billion, even for now, $1 billion is $1 million a year for 1,000 years. And they sold that division for $26 billion. Now, I'm not saying that that's not simplistic and that they don't have liabilities as well as assets. I'm not getting into that. But don't tell me that in order to make this project affordable, that it requires a dump in Berkshire County, much less the town of Lee. And the only way we're going to find out about where we stand about this dump is to push back. We're being told to do so by the very people who put us here. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm not so smart as to think that I'm smarter than the voters of Lee. I'm not. It's my responsibility. I have a mandate. I was put here, and I don't talk to just 10 or 20 people. I hear from people up and down all over the places. I'm sure you do as well. And this is why I've made a motion, and other people will speak to it. But tonight is the night that we decide what the next step is going to be. That's it. Thank you.
I just want to finish what I was saying before. Okay, so I've worked on it for 8 years. It was never my intention to hurt the town of Lee. The last thing in the world I want to do. My whole family's here, my grandchildren here, my great-grandchildren soon to be here. And when this started out, we started out the same way as all of you. No dump in Berkshire County. And we worked for 8 years on this to get to the point where we had certain alternatives to look at, and they weren't pretty. And all I can say is that I can't possibly second that, because the alternatives and the unknown, the ramifications of what would happen, I know where we are right now with the settlement agreement that is better than the one in 2016, believe it or not, even though 16 said they had to take it all off. And I just can't this time. It is in the court, and everybody knows you're going back to the same court that we went to the first time and lost. I think they're the same judges, to be truthful, but I'm not sure. And that would just put us way back. And as far as how much of a cleanup, it's more than what the 2016 permit was. I don't know the actual percentage off the top of my head. But I would have just a question for you. Have you talked to anybody from EPA specifically with concerns or questions?
I have not, and I've, as you well know, that this board has not had any meetings regarding Rest of the River since I've been in office.
Right.
So I know nothing about your arrangements with.
So would you be willing to talk to somebody from EPA?
Absolutely.
Okay, we can get you names, okay? And along with that, do you have any, no, none of us have idea of the ramifications if this should
We
happen.
don't. We do not.
So that's okay. I'm not going to say.
But I'm saying that that's no reason to stop us. That's my argument, and that's the argument of the voters of Lee. There's plenty of evidence.
And were you around Berkshire County when Pittsfield went through their issue?
Oh, listen, I have stories about the EPA and GE that will make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. And I know about the EPA and their process and how they oversee river cleanups, where they show up in a car, the suits get out, they've got their clipboards, they look and go, this looks fine. And they talk to GE engineers who assure them that the work is being done. And there's evidence up and down Berkshire County of what GE doesn't do when they said they're going to do it, so.
Okay. Anyways, I'll open it up. Tim's had his hand up from the very beginning. Sure.
My name is Tim Gray on the Housatonic River. I got that designation because there's the biggest environmental group in the world actually is called the Waterkeeper Alliance. It's on my t-shirt, okay? And they came to me about 20 years ago and said, Tim, the amazing work that you've done on the river, and we want to be part of this organization. This organization is now worldwide in probably 40 countries, and there's about 370 of us or something around the world, and we fight for our rivers. And if you've ever wondered why I fight for the river, it's because I am a river keeper, and all river keepers fight this way for the rivers. And I heard a lot of erroneous information tonight, like Sean. I want to tell you that the EPA is taking 20 parts per million out of the river. Why are they taking that out of the river if 50 parts per million, like you said, is safe in the dump?
Because it's bad. No, because it's bad in the river. I don't disagree.
It's bad in the dump.
All right, Tim, could you have some respect,
It's bad in the
please?
dump.
Again,
Well, I'm a little frustrated too, because I come to these
And I'm
meetings.
frustrated too. You've been on this for 20 years, and I applaud you for everything you've done. But
okay,
you've not
let
come
me
out
continue
with
talking. Am I talking,
anything.
please? Let me talk.
No, I was talking before. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll shut
I'm
up.
about to walk out, Patty.
I'm sorry, Tim.
Don't walk out, say what you want to say.
Finish what you want to say, but you
I'm
stopped.
telling you what you're saying. I'm saying you said something too. That's wrong. You folks listen to Matt Power and a bunch of people. I was part of the mediation, and anybody that thinks that the mediation was proper, you got another thing coming. I went to the first mediation. I joined because I thought maybe there's some hope in this. And then what I found out is all these people, such as the selectmen of every town, all of a sudden thought they were river experts. And I started watching what was going on, and I watched all you people think you knew about the river, and you don't know about the river. And Matt Power doesn't know about the river, and GE knows about the river for sure, but they want you to dump in the county. They don't want to take that many PCBs. Now the plan, let's go to the signs that are out right now. The sign says, keep the plant. Well, what does the plan do for us? It gives us a dump. Our calculations say that at the best, maybe they're taking 40% of the PCBs out of the river. Why are we letting them do this? It's not going to clean the river. You know what it's going to be? And I guarantee you that in 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years, this river will stay contaminated. Now, I studied PCBs in college, okay? I did the first sampling in the river. I got a grant in my junior year of college, and I took graduate courses in instrument technology to learn how to sample PCBs, and I know a lot about this river. And you people know nothing. I mean, you really do. And it's really a shame that you guys were put on the bandwagon to negotiate for us. Now, you knew I was here in town, you could have called me up, but no, that didn't happen either, okay? Because you guys were on a mission to suck into what GE. Now, let's go back to this mediation. I know what it was. You said 2016 was a worse deal. Well, you know what? In 2016, they were trucking into Texas.
Oh, I'm sorry. I take,
Right?
I'm wrong.
Exactly what the people in Berkshire County would like to see.
Yes.
You see? And the amount of PCBs has been going back and forth, and you can't even make sense out of what EPA says because they don't really know. Now, the other thing is right here, next to us is the Hudson River. Everybody's suing each other on the Hudson River. And why? Because the EPA cleanup did not work. And the fish levels are not going down. And they have problems. And so all of a sudden, 40 people are suing each other on the Hudson River because the EPA didn't do their job right. And I can stay here all night and tell you stuff that EPA has done in Berkshire County, as Bob said, that would make your hair stand up end. And if it wasn't for HRI and the people on their tails all the time, they would have gotten away with a lot more than they probably got away with when we weren't watching them. And, I'm here to tell you that this deal is terrible for the river. And it will leave it contaminated forever. So that second half of the sign, best option for the river. These people who put up those signs and don't put their names on them, by the way. When we put up our signs, you know what we did? We put phone numbers, we put, web addresses, you could email us. We decided to be transparent and tell people who we were. These other people that are putting up these signs, I consider them cowards. Because I've always been out in front, I've always made it one of my things to come out and make myself accessible and talk to people. That's not happening. What's happening is the same thing that happened during the process of when you negotiated everything. The reason I left the mediation, because everything was being done behind closed doors, and everybody was at the mediation, thought they knew all about the river, and there wasn't one person, and they started fighting me, yelling at me at the first meeting. Mr. Statz, if you know him from Stockbridge. Right, the very first meeting, they started treating me like that I know nothing of the river. Now let me finish.
Okay.
You keep interrupting, please.
Okay.
And so again, this plan stinks for the river. It's nowhere near the best option for the river. Nowhere even close, folks. And the river will stay contaminated. And one thing I will do before I die is I'll make sure that 50 years from now, everybody will remember who left this river to be contaminated. Because guess what? The citizens of Berkshire County have been fighting it, and we are fighting it. The town of Lee is very unified against your dump. There are obviously some people in the town of Lee who are putting up these signs. They must think they're more important than the rest of the residents or something, but why don't they put their names on it? They don't.
But that has nothing to do with why we're here tonight.
I know.
We don't know.
Well, it does, because these signs came up and they're hurting the town of Lee by having these signs up. Because it's misinformation, once again. And so what I'm trying to say is that really there needs to be a very revamp of everything in this. And that's what my lawyers and HRI's lawyers are doing in Boston. We are working towards that. And I'm sure none of you have read any of the briefs or followed anything about it, but if you had, you would find out that these lawyers have laid out in stellar language exactly how this went down and how GE snookered you guys. You got to remember, GE didn't like in 2016 the plan, so they were the ones that sued EPA. And what out of that suit came mediation, right? And the mediation was a joke. It was a joke. Everybody on the mediation table didn't know what they were talking about. So the bottom line is, I'm here to save our river. But I'm also here to save our town because I care about our town. And this dump is wrong. It's in a sand pit. It's 1,000 feet up from the river that we're going to clean up. You know, the whole thing doesn't make any sense at all. And you know, like I said, I could keep you stories, tell you stories about EPA. We have to work with EPA because they're the only organization federally that do this. But they are wrong so many times, and we have caught them so many times red-handed doing bad stuff. And if you want to know all about it, we have it all documented on video. So
How come you haven't brought that out before? How come you didn't bring that out before?
It's been out for years. You guys just don't follow it. Did you ever, did you ever use the river? You know, you river
No, because the
experts?
signs are all
I bet
like,
you half of the people that were there in these river meetings never even took canoe out on the Housatonic River.
No, probably not, because of all the signs.
Yeah, but probably not
Don't
because
fish.
they're not river people.
Maybe
So,
not.
so Tim, what is the best plan for the river?
Right.
Like
The best plan for the river would be to remove quite a bit more.
Quite a
Okay,
bit,
so we
not
don't
all
make
of
the
it?
mistake of the Hudson, okay, because that's where EPA is headed right now. The same thing they did on the Hudson. That's terrible. It's going to be a mess. You think it's a mess now? You wait, if they take the same pathway. EPA is an institutional organization and they're very hard to change the ways they do things. And they
I
do
would agree.
everything the same. And therefore, you know, what they're doing right now, the way I read it, it looks exactly what happened on the Hudson. And it's really a shame. And, you know, Sean, I would encourage you to think about this. This dump is not good. It's at the gate of October Mountain State Forest, our greatest state forest, right? People come to camp now and leave. You're gonna have your tent next to the toxic landfill. It's gonna be good for the state forest, huh? You know? All the lands around it are an area of environmental concern. It was designated that because they're special lands. And some of those lands are right at the bottom of where they're building the dump, right down to the bottom of it.
I know.
So if the dump ever leaks, and you say dumps don't ever leak, well,
No,
come visit me at my greenhouse, Sean, like we
I
used to
know.
do, and I'll tell you about all the dumps that have leaked in the United States.
I wish you would.
Well,
'Cause we've
you
done
want me to come and
research.
tell you? I'll tell you.
No, I'd
about
like you
it.
to write it down, where they are.
Read our website and start reading.
I tried reading it.
Well, you didn't.
I didn't
read
get
too
far
much,
enough into it.
because it's a lot of it's there.
And
Okay.
Tim, I don't disagree with you about any of that, but I don't see how us rescinding the deal and trying to fight it at all costs gets us more cleanup or puts us in a better position as a town. And that's my
That's the position of it. You think
sincerity.
this town's gonna help?
We
This dump is gonna help
we
our
already
town?
have a
You're
dump.
delusional.
Tim, we already are living we've lived next to the dump my entire life, Tim.
You should have just took
Okay,
it.
Janice, you can talk when you come up, but what I'm trying to say is, this dump has been in existence my entire life.
Yeah, it
If
has
thi-
been.
It has been.
Janice,
Janice, again, fine.
Monica?
Monica Ryan, District 6 representative for many years. I'm against the dump, as many people, as the majority of the people in our town are. I have a couple of questions.
Monica, I'll let you answer your questions, but we are not here tonight to debate the dump,
Right.
okay? We are here to act on Bob's
That's my question.
statement.
So, has anything been done with the $50,000 that the town meeting had authorized you to?
No.
So it's still sitting in a bank account. So, I kind of find it odd that Bob has to even make this motion. To me, we made that motion back when we had the meeting, and we gave you the instructions then. You didn't follow those instructions. We feel that's not really fair to us. So what we're saying, I feel like I represent a few people, is we've given you the mandate at the annual town meeting, just as we did on every other warrant article on that town meeting. So why would you pick and choose which ones you're going to do and which ones you're not going to do? And the argument that, well, it could be, we can't renege or whatever, we've given you the mandate to do it. all of you.
Okay, we've heard you.
So we're asking you to do the job that you've been elected to do, but also that we've mandated you to do with our annual town meeting. I mean, why else would we have an annual town meeting? You guys could just make a decision on your own without us, and we wouldn't have an annual. But we have it. That's our form of government. It's a form of government that needs to be respected, and our opinions should be respected, and our decisions, our votes that we took should be respected, regardless of I don't know what the outcome is. If you don't know what the outcome might be, get an expert, hire a lawyer, use the $50,000 to get a lawyer to give you the advice that you need to find out what the ramifications would be. That's my instruction to you. That's what we all instruct you to do. Get legal advice to find out how to get out of the agreement. It's a new EPA from when this was all agreed to. Look at the pipeline. Who would have thought that would have been ended, Sean? But things do change.
But was that the EPA, you're talking about the Keystone pipeline?
The Keystone, but I'm
Was
just
that the
saying, it's
EPA
an event that changed.
I'm
Who
not
would
sure
have
that,
thought?
but you understand what I'm saying, I'm not sure that the EPA was the one who shut that down.
No, I agree. So I'm just saying,
Okay.
who would have ever thought that that would have been shut down? And yet it did happen. You're right, it wasn't the EPA, I think it was the federal government. But in any event, never doubt that a small group of concerned citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has, said Margaret Mead. And I implore you to consider that. We can make this change. We can make a positive change for our town, and we're begging you to do that for us. We're really begging you. And I mean, you're having this vote tonight, but I feel like it's almost a moot point. You should be doing it already. You shouldn't have to have Bob race. You should have done this already, and I feel ashamed that you haven't done it. Please represent us, and please take care of the town of Lee. I know you're saying that you don't know what the ramifications are, but then find out. Get the expert to help you. Get a proper lawyer, someone, an environmental lawyer, someone who can help you with well, here's what's going to happen, possibly. You're not going to know every last answer, but you're not the experts. Get an expert to help you.
Thank you. Okay.
I totally agree with what she says. Please, hire someone to see what the ramifications are. It's well worth it. Because this dump is going to wreck our town for years to come. Not only are they going to be dumping stuff, it's going to end up leaking. There's going to be dump trucks going through our town. Everything's going to be airborne. People are going to be getting sick. And do I trust the EPA or GE? Absolutely not. And what I would have did, if I was there negotiating, I would have said, how much money is it going to cost us to clean this up? How much GE would you give us to clean this up? Everybody take that money, put it into an account, hire someone to invest it, don't touch it. Down the road, years from now, with all technology, there's going to be other ways to clean up this river. Do I want this river cleaned up? I do. But I think it's better if we do it on our own and try to get as much money as you can from them and put it into an account with all these towns and work together. Because down the road, there is going to be a lot more technology. There really is. And that's all I have to say. I mean, I voted all you guys in here, you're supposed to represent the people. And I'm losing sleep over this. I'm getting ill over this dump. It's been 2 years, and I'm just tired of it. This is not what I wanted to spend my 60s doing, fighting a dump or fighting any of you. We've all been friends for years. Sean used to be my babysitter. Patty, I've known her since she known me since I was little. So please, just look into it. Hire an attorney to see what the ramifications are going to be. I think we can win this. I really truly believe this. We can win this. We can stop this dump and keep our town the way it is, our beautiful town. Thank you.
John?
Yeah, John Bodie, District 3 rep. Well, got one positive thing to start out with. I got some numbers. There's 4,437 registered voters in the town of Lee. And, the population is 5,265. And the possible population of people over 18 that can register to vote are 4,783. So Registered voters, 4,437. Over 18 and registered to vote, 4,783. That's a great number. A lot of eligible voters who are registered to vote, and say I'm proud of that as a town. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit disappointed that the last election, there was only 990 people that voted. So, be careful how we throw around a mandate with less than 22% of the people that actually voted in the town, citizens that could vote, voted in the town of Lee. I mean, just because people don't vote, which I had no excuse for, but doesn't mean that they gave you a mandate because they didn't vote. I'm amazed at Tim Gray's efforts over the years. He's put a lot into this. He's put his heart and soul and a good part of his life into this thing. I know he was part of the agreement and his group, and to me they're one of the ones that are able to bring a suit, which they have, and I wish them all the luck in the world with that suit. And anybody that feels strongly about this should support his group to follow this process through. I got up in the last town meeting last year and I asked, what are the repercussions if we get out of this deal at this point? And I still haven't to this day got an answer. It could be bad, because if we lose the ability for oversight, and this dump comes to our town anyway, through the legal process, then we just basically gave away unimaginable amount of control over what happens. To monitor, to oversee, to make sure that if it does come to fruition, that we make sure everything that was said that was going to be done is done. So I think there's a huge amount of importance for us to make sure we don't lose oversight. Like I said, I understand that the process, there's a lawsuit, several lawsuits now, one against the selectmen in town of Lee. I'd like to see how that, pans out. I'll also like to see how Tim Gray's group makes with their lawsuit, because I think they're the ones being involved in the agreement that can legally have an impact in stopping this thing. Us pulling out of it and rescinding from it doesn't necessarily guarantee it's going to stop this thing, but it does give up certain control that we have. I have no problem with looking into the repercussions, because like I said, I've asked this question and I still haven't got an answer. If what steps we take, we really need to think them through. We need some guidance to make sure what the repercussions are up front before we do something that we'll be very sorry for in the long run. That's all I have to say for now.
Thanks, John. Ann?
And my name is, I live in District 2, I'm also a district rep of District 2. So it's not that Bob's requesting you guys to right now, tonight, say, we're pulling out of the rest of River agreement. And I think that point was missed. Everything else has been talked about. He's only asking the request of the $50,000 to find out exactly what John just got up and asked. We were never given an answer of what the repercussions are. The only one way to find that out, take the $50,000 that us reps voted for you guys to use and find out, okay? You are not pulling out of the agreement by saying and releasing that money for what we have asked as district reps to happen. We just want that money to put to use like we requested. We want answers. That's all.
Just to be truthful, though, that isn't how the motion read, Ann.
Actually, the motion as read is, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, did you take that right from town meeting?
I took it right from town meeting.
Can I look at that?
Yeah.
Because I thought I had missed one of the...
I think we might all need a bit of a refresher on the motion language anyway.
Or just inhale and exhale it. Even that would be good.
Okay, so So the motion was to appropriate the sum of $50,000 for the purpose of retaining legal counsel
Correct.
to overturn the agreement that would result in a toxic waste dump in Lee and exhaust all avenues to secure the removal of all PCBs from the from the Houstonic River with the assurance of safe transport to out-of-state facilities for such materials. It doesn't say anything about finding out the ramifications of pulling out of the settlement, and we have probably no control over 3/4 of what's written there.
No control over that?
We have no...
If you hire a lawyer, you could.
But that's not what you're asking for. You're asking us to take the 50,000, hire another environmental lawyer to tell us the ramifications of
Of what it
pulling.
would be to even pull out of the suit.
Right.
Because nobody's given us any answers. We've got nothing. And it's
Wow.
been 2 years. You say 8 years of your life you dedicated to this,
Yeah.
but never once in 8 years did you, besides the one time at the meeting, you told us you would come back and ask us. as
I
reps.
agree, and I apologize to Jim
The
wherever he
apology
was.
doesn't hold water, Patty.
I was
We're
naive.
still here, honey. We're still here. We're still here in the situation that 3 people made a decision for nearly 6,000 people. And you didn't follow through with your word. I mean, come on. You can't see how
Okay.
wrong that is? Then change it now. Take that vote and change it now.
I can't do that.
We were lied to. You're ready to lie to us and keep your lie, but you're ready to stick it and stay with GE and the EPA? It's disgusting.
Okay. Neil?
Neil Clark, District 2. Start off by saying I think that if is probably the biggest word in the English language. And that's what is at the crux, as I see it and listen to it tonight, of the fear of the unknown. What happens if, in all honesty, if I can recall the last annual town meeting, that idea of putting forth that $50,000 to hire an attorney, that really was to start the process. Obviously, $50,000, because we have a history of paying $30,000 a year that the reps approved over and over again for a number of years. That wasn't intended even to cover it, but just the idea of starting the process. If you start a process, you have to have a process for what? So the process, and as the people and as a representative I understood, wanted a result of not having a toxic dump in town. Whatever the level of toxicity, didn't want, and everybody's in agreement about that. That's the good news. I just think that if you begin the process, most of the town, in my estimation, or at least obviously speaking to myself, have no knowledge of all the stuff that you know. And so being in the dark and being afraid of having a toxic dump, a lot of human resistance to that comes out in anger and frustration, and it's understandable, but it's regrettable as well, particularly in light of the friends that we're dealing with and the service that's been provided to the town by a number of folks on this board, past, present, and probably to come. It doesn't change anything other than everybody knows we don't want that done. And all we're asking is, can we start the procedure? Because we were in the dark before, and we were under the illusion that we weren't going to end up with one. But lo and behold, here we are, and now, like I think Sean has said, we're in a bind because of signing on to the agreement. And I don't know that folks here, and I don't know if you could give more information as to what are the ramifications of pulling out of that agreement. That might help, but I think having a lawyer to begin that process doesn't preclude them. Don't have a background in law, just what I watch on TV. But you can withdraw without prejudice. I think a lawyer could withdraw at some point and say, "Whoa, this is not the avenue I thought it was going to be to go down. I would advise you, as legal counsel, to cease and desist now." But what we're saying is, we've got a sorry, Ken. But for the folks who came out and voted anyway, and that's going to be true in any election. The statistics are that it represents, I think even the Eagle called it some kind of a landslide vote or whatever. So numbers as they are, we want to begin the process of trying to find out, can we get out of this without causing further harm to the town? So this is the avenue to hire, well, I don't know what other avenue there would have been, and under the constraints of the time, looking at the warrant last year, that's why that's why I proposed that amendment at the time. And I don't think it's revisionist history to say that my understanding at the time was that the town meeting was going to be cut after the budget was done and other stuff was going to be left for the future. So that was my avenue of saying, I think we deserve to have this discussion about the dump and what the future may or may not hold. That's why I offered that amendment.
I see.
And town council, people met, went over it, and they went ahead with it. So it withstood scrutiny at the time and passed. And again, that was the intention. Start the process, take a look. Is it a road that's going down? And Bob, I think even at some time when they say, we can't take that bridge, that's something that winds up being a reality. I don't think the leader says Harry Carey for everybody, but no, it is we know we have the mandate to go ahead and try to find out what's possible. And right now we're in the dark, and
I'm not sure that I have any information that you wouldn't have at this point.
Well, that's why I think a lawyer might be able to find out for us. So that was the intent, and again, I think it's a darn shame that this has been a contentious issue in town. But when you think of what it's about, you can understand it too. That a toxic dump is not a pretty way of describing what are the benefits of moving to Lee, or what the town has to offer. We got 25 million, but we got a toxic dump. So that's
And to your point, Neil, what I did say in my presentation was the permission had been granted to us to do this. By the town meeting with the full knowledge of how expensive it would be, and we'll fight until we succeed, or until those same people, our constituents, indicate a change of heart on the matter. Meaning, we start the process trying to rescind this agreement. If we find out ultimately, we have to do the work ultimately to begin with to figure out where we're going. Nobody in this room has the answers, but we have to do something to move this forward toward that until everybody here, everybody out there who lives in this town says, you know what, we've rethought this, what's the next step? But we have to do something, and those two articles have already been passed at town meeting, and I'm asking that we act on them. That's what my motion is.
And I'd flip the scenario on those new signs and say, take the deal.
Yes. Yeah.
Gail's going to be the last speaker, okay? We've talked this thing to death.
No, I don't hear us.
She already had a hand up.
I just want to make 2 points. I was speaking to someone from the ecological restoration, and we were talking about Josh Collins' project here, and she was just happened to mention that there was a part of a dam there, and that it was going to be taken.
You're talking about Jeff Cohen.
Oh, you're talking about Jeff Cohen.
Josh Cohen owns the Moles.
Not the developer guy. Okay, So she said there was a partial dam there, and I said, is there any PCBs behind it? She said, yes, there is. And I said, well, what are they going to do with them? And she said, they're going to be shipped to Ithaca. Okay, so there's a potential place to ship them into Ithaca. Ithaca, I think that's what she said, Ithaca or Rochester. It's somewhere over in New York State. But I found that interesting.
because they were gonna do it before this settlement, okay? So, I mean, there is an option out there that's closer than Texas, and, what was the other thing? I also, like, think that, I did have another point, but, the mediation, in the mediation, just like, I forget what it was saying, there is technology coming down the road, and there are patents out there, and they have been brought up. And those things could be investigated in this agreement.
That's part of the agreement.
And then, here's the other point. The system is set up that you go through channels within the government, like working with the state, you go before the Conservation Commission. And then if you don't agree with them, there's an appeal, depending on who it is. And then it goes to DEP, and then it goes to the lawyers at Boston. And if it doesn't work there, then it goes into the court system. So there is a process to take it to court and see what's legal. And there are some things that happened with this mediation that don't jive with a lot of people. And no one's saying that any select board person did a bad job, basically, for the town. I mean, we appreciate everything you've done, Patty, for the town. We just don't agree with this. We never wanted the dump. We don't agree with it. And we really would like to see some money put to a lawyer to help us, give us more information. You know, and, you know, I just hope that you can decide to do that and come up with some information, because people are really frustrated. We don't want to fight amongst ourselves. I mean, it feels terrible. Nobody feels happy about fighting amongst ourselves. But I think, you know, everyone I talk to, I would say out of every 9 people that I talked to about the dump, maybe possibly one person, I basically didn't really have anybody who said they wanted the dump, quite honestly, but, you know, maybe 1 or 2 people said they didn't care. It didn't bother them, you know? So, you know, you're always going to get that, you know, they could care less. I mean, let's face it, if only 22% of the people actually vote, then you have to assume that the other people may or may not care, or can't get to the voting, or think that their vote isn't going to count. There's many reasons people don't vote. But there are a portion of the people of this town who do vote, and usually they're on top of the issues. And I think that the fact that people are voting for select board members who say they're going to get us out of the PCD dump matters, and that really should be respected. And I hope that you move forward and put this money towards a lawyer who can help us at least understand whether we can get out of this situation. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna close.
I just got a couple questions.
Couple. Janet, couple. Then after that, that's it, because we do have other people here tonight, and we're making them sit.
Jim Castanero, District 1 Rep. A couple people asked me, I was hoping Jeremiah would be here. Now, who does he represent? Does he represent this select board or the last select board?
Jeremiah?
Yes.
He's the town council.
Now, but he's representing the last one that's getting sued, right?
He's representing us.
Okay.
Whoever sits in the seat is who he represents.
But what I'm saying is, I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Are you asking if he's representing Tom?
Yeah, is he representing Tom, Dave, and the old selectmen's meeting?
I would probably
I
say
mean,
yes.
for the town,
because
for the
they
town.
were on
So
the
that's
board.
all included, so.
But I'm not positive of that. Okay?
Is that like a conflict of interest maybe, or, no?
For him to.
Well, because.
He's representing the select
People
board.
feel that the old select board's representing GE, that's what I'm getting at. So is he representing
Well, people
GE, the
feel
old
that
select
way,
board,
but-
or this select board? Anyway, that was
He's
a question.
representing the 3 of us right now.
Okay.
They're
Okay,
like
that's
off
fine.
of it. They're
Okay.
not on the board anymore.
Exactly, that's
They're out.
what I'm saying. And before starting negotiations, did you guys have to fill out any disclosure forms? Like if you owned GE stock, or you work for GE, or maybe you had a friend work there, or maybe one of your relatives worked for GE?
I can't tell you that for sure. I know I
I mean,
didn't.
did you sign one?
No, I didn't have to.
Did you negotiate?
Yes, but I didn't have to fill.
You didn't
out
have to fill that out, so you could have $1 million worth of stock in GE.
Well, no, if I had $1 million worth of stock, I would have.
Well, you know what I'm saying, right?
I didn't
So
have, I
there's
had no need
no
for it to
disclosure
go.
whatsoever.
For myself, I cannot tell you about
Okay.
the other members.
All right, that was my question. And if you talk about ramifications, put one shovel full of toxic waste up there, you're gonna see ramifications.
Janet?
Ramifications. All I gotta say.
Promise I'll be quick. It's hard, this is hard because no one in this room, no one in this community wants a dump, and it's been divisive, and I'm sorry about that. Whenever I'm in quite a predicament about trying to make decisions, I'm never embarrassed to say that I seek people who are more knowledgeable than me. I try to read a little bit more, but mostly I ask questions. And similar to Smiley, in asking about Jeremiah, so in my mind, there's two people that probably in this, because a lot of us have said, I don't know, I don't really know, I don't know the repercussions, I don't know what's going to happen if this and if that, speaking on Neil's if. So we go to people who might know more, people who get paid way more than any of us do. And in my mind, there's two people. There's Jeremiah, who is our town council, and then there's this gentleman that I've never seen before, but I've heard his name, Matt Powell, who represented,
excuse me,
I know that, he represented the rest of the river
I think
committee.
that's.
And so, excuse me, I really like to not do
I'm
this.
sorry.
This is so hard for me anyway. Could you please not?
I'm sorry.
Because I'll lose my train of thought. So there's two lawyers that were getting paid, that are getting paid. And my question to you is, well, I'm imagining Matt Powell is the one that advised this rest of the river to take the deal because it was kind of like a 50-50 chance. If you didn't, we would end up with in a way worse situation. What does Matt Powell say right now?
I don't know, Janet, because I
Okay.
haven't been in contact.
Okay, and what does
Just so you
Jeremiah?
know, everything's in the courts, so we're kind of just waiting.
Okay, and what does Jeremiah Pollard say right now? As our town council, I've written down and tallied repercussions. What are the repercussions? None of us can say what the repercussions would be to pull out of the deal. A little bit afraid if we were to pull out of the deal, we lose any control over what happens within our community. Does Jeremiah advise anything?
He is, well, he's representing us in the suit. Of course, it's Superior Court. Other than that, he's not been, I don't believe we've asked him that question yet.
So my question is there a procedural option to table this motion and actually come up with some answers, like real specific answers from Jeremiah on what he would advise, what he sees as the repercussions, and even if Matt Powell could do some advising at this point, or is that out of the question? And I could be way
I don't
wrong
think
in
it's out
even
of the
asking
question,
this.
but it's something I'd have to look into. I mean, not with Jeremiah, but with Matt Powell.
Well, I do appreciate all that you guys have put in to all of this, and I thank you so much because I know I would never have the courage to be able to sit up there, and I appreciate everything. And Bob, welcome to this.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close this part of the meeting. Yeah, we'll take your comments under advisement. Bob, you have a motion on the floor?
I do.
You had a second?
I had a second for discussion. And that's, I kind of, I'm still looking for answers too, and that's why I'm wondering, you know, procedurally what we do next. If this $50,000 could be used, you know, could we amend that motion? Are we bound by town meeting to use that money specifically for what it's issued to?
My belief is we do.
Yeah,
That's
because-
why town meeting has to make
Right. My whole
finances.
My whole point is, we've been given permission by the town meeting to act on Article 10 and Article 16 to work toward rescinding the dump. Looking into the legal costs of rescinding the dump is part of rescinding the dump. But I think what has been lacking here for the people of Lee has been transparency and full disclosure. So I suggest that we pass this motion to act on Article 10 and Article 16 and come back to our constituents and say, here's what we found out. We're working toward rescinding this agreement. Here's what we found out, before we actually do anything formally. But if we have to act on those motions that were passed at town meeting in order to go anywhere. And that's what I'm saying.
Okay, well,
So let's work together with the town meeting, with the town reps, with the people who say, let's pass this motion and move forward and report back to the voters, the people that put us in these chairs, and let them know every step of the way where we're going before we actually go back to rest of the river. Let's find out as a town where we stand together and what our options are.
I guess I'll be very blunt, Bob. If you're asking for a vote on this motion right now, I would have to say no.
and I agree. Now, there's nothing to say we can't work on our own, because ramifications is a big step. I don't know that we'll be able to even get that in.
And I was gonna, my next, question for Chris is that could we work towards some sort of legal advice as far as what would the consequences would be? Is it even possible to rescind the deal and that sort of, because the language of the article is, the amendment to the article is very specific, and that's not what we're all sort of talking about here. I think what we're all talking about here is we don't know. We don't have any idea. So that's kind of where we're at. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
You got to be a little optimistic. You don't go forward, we'll never know. And what? Our town. If you love your town, go for it.
Okay. There's a motion on.
We have a motion on the floor. We have a motion on the floor. This, and it passed, both of these articles passed overwhelmingly at town meeting. I still say, regardless of what your interpretation of a mandate is, I say we have a mandate, and this will allow us to move forward and come back to our constituents, come back to the voters, let them know what's going on, let them know what we found out, and also, I mean, obviously, it's not spelled out who we use for an attorney, what sources we go to. It doesn't spell that. That's up to us. But we have to do something other than go to Jeremiah, who's our town attorney, and we can start by asking, but we have to go further than that to find out what our options are, and this will allow us to do it.
Okay, then I don't feel comfortable passing a motion tonight at this time to do that. I would rather check with town council and maybe Matt Powell, I don't know, just see what's out there, what's available.
I'm not beholden, I personally am not beholden to Matt Powell. I didn't sign on to the rest of the river agreement, and I find the whole process appalling. So I've got a motion on the floor,
and there is a second.
And there is a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none. The motion dies.
Motion dies.
But would you give a copy of this to Cindy? Because we didn't see it, didn't read it. You have a lot of information there. I'd like to read.
I'll certainly send it to Cindy. I'm sorry, I think that's mine.
I'm sorry.
I would be calling you.
Yeah, we're gonna do one first. Got it. Yeah, that was kind of short time, 40 years.
I think he was talking about me.
No, I think he's talking about me. Hello, David.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We don't have any of Susan's information here.
I don't have anything.
We don't have anything from the Mount.
She was here, there she is, yeah.
Right, so we'll just go on. We don't need them, I guess, if, Bob wants one, but we did have the Mount information.
Oh, no, that's okay.
We had it the other day.
Yeah.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have discussion of the Mount and a letter of interest for 135 Laurel Lake Crossroad, which is on this town meeting, Article 16. And we have Susan Whistler from the Mount who's going to kind of explain what's going on.
I have the letter
Okay.
that was submitted, and as you know, I asked and was granted the opportunity to have an article placed in the warrant. So this is from Ms. Whistler, who's here tonight, and members of the Maine Lennox Board of Selectmen. I'm writing to formally express the interest of Edith Wharton Restoration Incorporated, aka the Mount, Edith Wharton's home, in acquiring from the towns of Lee and Lennox the farmhouse and lot at 135 Laurel Lake Crossroad, Lee, Massachusetts, that is currently part of Edith Wharton Park. This parcel and the farmhouse site on it, as well as the rest of the Edith Wharton Park, were part of the estate that Edith Wharton designed and built in 1902, and we have a keen interest in seeing the farmhouse preserved and restored. We understand that the property is subject to Article 97 protection, and confirm to you that it would be our intention for the parcel to continue to be used for the benefit of the public and other land and conservation purposes. We would preserve and restore the farmhouse's exterior and rehabilitate the interior for uses yet to be determined, with one option under consideration being housing for our Writers in Residence program, now in its 8th year. Public access to the parcel would be maintained. The conveyance would be at an agreed upon purchase price and subject to any requisite town and state approvals. Over the past several years, we have engaged in informal discussions with town staff about our acquiring the parcel, hence my request to you last week. If there is an interest on the part of the board, of the select boards, in this proposition, we are prepared to commence discussions immediately and to make a public presentation at any upcoming Board of Selectmen or annual town meetings. Thank you for your consideration, Susan Whistler, Executive Director of the Mount Edith Wharton's home. And here we have tonight, as promised, Ms. Whistler.
Yes, thank you, Chris, and thank you for inviting me, members of the Select Board, and thank you all for staying for this presentation. And the article in the warrant is pretty hard to understand, in my opinion, or certainly I found it difficult. And so I'm here mostly just to try to simplify and orient, because it's actually, I think, a pretty exciting proposition. And I'm going to share with you the same materials that I'm going to be sharing with the Select Board. And the first is 2 maps that just, one identifies exactly what on Edith Wharton Park is the subject of the proposal, and it is a 3.4-acre parcel that is part of Edith Wharton Park, which is just a gloriously magnificent meadow that the towns of Lee and Lennox acquired back in 1971, and is under the jurisdictions of both the Conservation Commissions of Lee and Lennox at the moment, and on the park is a farmhouse, a sort of arts and crafts style farmhouse, shingle style. It was actually built by Edith Wharton as part of the estate. So she built the Mount, the main house in 1902, the Springfield Republican and other papers in 1906 report that they have now engaged on the farm complex, and they are in the process of constructing a farmhouse on Laurel Lake, because Wharton's land, and I'll pass out these maps. Actually, I'll let this one be distributed. This shows the 3.4-acre parcel, which is proposed to be disposed of, and it includes the farmhouse, which, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm misstating, the question of the farmhouse for the purpose of the Conservation Commissions has been something of a quandary, because it's a structure. And the Conservation Commissions are mainly designed to deal with land. And so I think from the perspective of the Conservation Commission's, the structure itself, which has been abandoned for about 9 years, is something of a burden. It's not really within their wheelhouse, and it would actually cost quite a bit of money to rehabilitate the house at this point. While the bones are good, the interior is completely gone, and that's probably not necessarily a top priority for the town to invest in this structure. For the Mount, we are the keepers of the Wharton legacy and of her home, and are dedicated to preservation of these historic structures. The house is very important, and so that's why I'm excited to be talking to the town about actually taking it off the town's hands with a stated commitment of preserving it, respecting the exterior envelope so that it will always be kind of a shingle-style arts and crafts structure, while at the same time completely giving continued jurisdiction and control over the land that surrounds it, letting that remain with the Conservation Commission. So there would be continued protection, conservation restrictions that we would agree to that would be imposed on the land. So public access would be maintained. It would remain for all essential purposes a public park. And I think in many ways it's a wonderful opportunity and one of those rare occasions that really is a win-win for all parties. And I don't know if you all are familiar with the work that the Mount has done to this point, but open space and public access, it matters more to me than almost anything, which is why will show you this map, which will show what we have been able to achieve within the last 5 years, which is to protect and provide open space access to about 120 additional acres, which are marked on this map, and you will see that they are the lands that run between the Mount's property and East Wharton Park. And we have created a trail system, and are creating a trail system that runs all through these properties that we hope to maintain and preserve for the public benefit. And Edith Wharton Park is the next abutting piece of property. We actually are running bird walks and such, starting at the Mount property all the way down through Laurel, Edith Wharton Park. We're very aware of the bobolink nesting sites that are there, and very respectful of them. And so the deal is still to be agreed upon. We will pay value, full value for this house. It will be appraised, so both towns will get money. They will be relieved of the ongoing annual maintenance burden. They will be not looking down the sort of barrel of potential demolition costs, which will eventually be what you're going to be facing if someone doesn't take immediate action with respect to the structure. And again, the land itself will be protected, and public access will be maintained. It has no impact on the causeway. I know that that's a very popular site for members of Lee in particular, and that's really all I have to say. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I think I just have the same questions I had before. First of all, purchase price would be appraised?
We're working on appraisals. I mean, Chris, please jump in.
Okay.
So,
Sure.
but that would form the basis, of course, of any discussion.
We're required to, under the Uniform Procurement Act, to determine a value of the property based on customary appraisal practices.
Okay.
Professional appraisal is required, and so in determining that value, there'll be a number of factors. I know there's some additional conditions that have been contemplated. All of those affect value.
Okay.
So we had an appraisal at one point, but we're talking about disposition with this very important conservation restriction on it. That will, of course, affect value. But yes, we have a legal requirement to establish the full and fair value, and towns need to take proceeds accordingly.
Just so people understand, currently the property is not taxable.
Correct.
That will not change. But we do pay an insurance policy on the house every year. I don't know how much it is, but it's an expense. And the only other thing we talked about was if there could be verbiage in the contract where the towns of Lennox and Lee would have first refusal if the worst-case scenario happened and you went out of business.
And I think that's a fine, that's one of the
Conditions
the
of-
conditions
yeah.
that I had alluded to,
Yeah.
that is a fine condition to add. But it will affect appraised value once that's attached. So as long as we're all understanding that fact, then I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Will we have that appraisal figure by town meeting time?
I don't know.
I think he has until the 29th to get back to the towns, so I don't know
Oh.
that it'll be in hand. Yeah. And then the last thing I will, again, just to try to bring some clarity to what, is it Article 17 in the Lee Town warrant? 16. This is an article that ran electronically in the Berkshire Eagle this Monday. I don't normally check the electronic Eagle, so I don't know how many of you do, but but it's actually a pretty fair statement of what we're proposing to do, and it also includes the timeline with respect to the house itself.
I'm all right, I read it all. I did too.
You did? Okay, great. So, and I'm happy to take questions from the board and or from the audience. Yes?
Hi, my name is Susie Harding, and I'm on town rep as well. And a neighbor pointed out to me last night that this particular section of land is one of the last pieces of waterfront property on Laurel Lake that that the town actually owns.
Correct.
And that I really respect your desire for open space and your commitments going forward, but I wonder if there's a scenario in which the town could retain ownership of the land and you might hit the house, so that there's no scenario in the future, because even with the right of first refusal, if that were to happen, we don't know that the town would be in a position to financially do anything about something happening.
So, one thing that we must do, because it's got Article 97 protection now, which is very powerful conservation, sort of public benefit conservation purposes. Once the property is conveyed out, away from a municipality, Article 97 falls away. So what we are agreeing to do is simultaneously with the purchase is to impose a conservation restriction that does exactly the same thing as Article 97. It will prohibit any sort of development and it will be in perpetuity. So I think there's no risk to the town of future development. Yeah.
So what that means is that even though it won't be municipally owned, so Article 97, the conservation restriction that would require public access will remain with any subsequent transaction. If the town was unable to build up a head of steam to repurchase the property with a right of first refusal, that a subsequent sale to a private owner wouldn't change the conservation restriction.
Would it change public access? It could be conserved and not developed, but that doesn't mean people can go.
But the conservation restriction will be written in such a way
It
to
will be written
include.
so as to allow for public access, which is exactly what we've done with respect to the 70 acres and the 50 acres, is public access. Ensure, a guarantee in perpetuity.
And for full disclosure, I mean, that does affect the value. But my sense is that we're okay with that as long as public access can be maintained.
I think the maximum would be so much money to.
Susan, would you mind just moving a little closer
sure,
to the
sure.
microphone for at home? Anne had her hand up first.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm following what Susie just asked, which is there a reason why you can't separate the house from the 3.4 acres? Is there a reason that can't happen, or?
I'm not certain. I mean,
I'm not for certain that couldn't happen.
I think that's what Susie was asking, right? Just so, yeah, it was something that came up in our district meeting that we had, that people were concerned that we would be giving away our only access to the lake that we own.
Well, there's only a 3.4 acre parcel that's the envelope, the town.
I've been there, I know.
Yeah, well, no, the town, what is the total acreage, 16 acres?
Yeah.
So the envelope around the building is 3.4 acres.
Which is,
And the rest is 12.60.
Yeah, and so we retain the 16 acres. The other parcel, is that, So there's a small,
Which has
there's a
access to the
small,
lake.
yeah, there's a small residential envelope that goes with the house, and then the towns still maintain the vast park.
My question again is there a reason why that it needs to include 3.4 acres?
Well, I mean, it will require a septic, it will
Yeah.
require park, I mean, there's certain infrastructure.
These are my,
Yeah, sure,
great.
sure.
Yeah, if you can answer those
Okay.
questions, great.
Yes.
Yeah.
John?
Yeah,
Susan,
I don't know
I'm
if you want
sorry,
me-
people at home
you want me to
can't
get up there or?
Yeah.
Right here. I remember quite a few years ago, talking to Bob Mason, God rest his soul, about this particular issue. And I was concerned back then that looking at this building and in disrepair that it was back then, I figured one of these days, you guys will be coming to town meeting and we'll be deciding to spend money on poles in this place because it's unsafe, or cleaning up the mess that after the thing fades into the cellar hole. So this proposition, to me, is a win-win proposition. I mean, to see this property and this house be rehabilitated with the historical value that it has, and to get that particular liability out of the town's hands would be a great, great situation in my mind. I don't see where it at all limits access to this property, because the people that know this story that goes way back when the two towns did buy this property, they actually designed what would have been a beach area. There was a parking area off the road. So this was kind of laid out at one time, and it really didn't include anything where this house was. So like I said, I don't see where it takes away from any access to this property or to the lake from this property. And I just couldn't see a better thing happen for, all parties concerned as far as, restoring this, building. And obviously when we get to the town meeting, there was one thing that I wanted to add was what you said was the method of being able to, have first refusal. The other thing I wanted to add was that the money that the town of Lee got from it would go in a separate fund to improve or maintain this park, Edith Wharton Park, or the town's park. So, I mean, I can't say enough about how, in favor of this I am.
So this is good, because when a town sells property, the proceeds of that sale, whatever they turn out to be, I mean, have to go towards utilization for capital expenditures of things like horizontal infrastructure improvements or buildings for that matter. And it goes into a separate special revenue account for those purposes. The town meeting would have to appropriate from that fund eventually, if it were to ever be utilized.
So it couldn't be in a separate fund, just specifically for Edith Wharton Park?
I mean, I could put we can add
I don't think we're gonna
maintain.
maintain, I don't think we're gonna take on the expense of maintaining.
But it would be up to
No, I'm just talking about what's existing, what's left. If we ever want to put some parking in there, or we ever want to improve that property, I mean, we may not be able to improve upon what's there now, but for any future need, because like I said, at one time, the people that originally came up with this deal to purchase this property, the intent was to have a beach, and someday down the road, that may be necessary for both the town league and the town.
Suffice to say, any proceeds could only be used for capital type improvements.
So
that's number one.
Town meeting could appropriate.
And number two, only town meeting can appropriate funds towards capital type improvements.
So should I go forward with my motion?
I certainly don't feel threatened by it.
Okay. I mean, maybe it doesn't make any
Oh,
sense
you mean
to
at
do
town
that.
meeting, you wanna make a motion to that effect?
Yeah, that money goes with, for the maintenance, upkeep, and improvement of just Edith Wharton Park.
And Chris can help you write that beforehand too, right?
I mean, if that's an issue, and it doesn't matter anyway, it's, I don't have to make that motion, but.
I mean, it gets a little, I guess the only reason I said anything at all was it does get a little tricky when one town meeting attempts to bind a future town meeting. So that gets a little unwieldy, but the use of those funds, again, will only be for capital improvements appropriated by town meeting.
So I guess my concern would be satisfied without
I think so.
that.
I think so, but I mean, again, if folks, need additional, I'm certainly, I wouldn't, as CFO, I wouldn't be threatened by that.
Okay, we'll discuss it, all right?
Okay, all right, well, that's, like I said, it's an excellent opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Peggy?
Yes,
And-
well, now we have you here. I would love to see the students of Lee and Lennox, maybe Edith Wharton was such a great writer. I mean, they used to teach Ethan Brown. When she was on the second floor of the Mount, she'd look out and write. And it would be wonderful to have the younger people, maybe once a year or something, Lee and Lennox, bring them over. And I don't know if you could write that in, but it surely would be a terrific opportunity, and she was a rather unusual character for the time. And the young people might possibly, young people have a great deal of respect for all kinds of people.
I would
So,
say,
I would be thrilled if
and I would be thrilled too, and we don't need to wait for a purchase and sale agreement.
Oh, that's
for that to happen.
wonderful.
So, and kids are free
Yeah.
every day at the Mount anyway.
I know,
So
and they're great.
I just need some teachers to work with to try to make this
Yes.
happen, but I would love something.
Yeah, I would too. We could retired teachers. No, but it would be wonderful because it's such a lovely place and you've done a great job with the gardens and everything there. It's been really spectacular. And I
Okay.
hope we can do this and get together. Thank you.
Ann, did you still want your hand up?
I did, but I think Gail had hers up before me.
Okay.
I'm sitting behind you, that's all.
Thank you. I just have one question. It's all the yellow that you're proposing to purchase?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Why are you taking all the shoreline? When I go to Edith Wharton Park, I'm usually in this section right here. And I just worry that I'm going to want to go there and I'm going to be told I can't be there.
No, that wouldn't happen. The trail that goes around the perimeter will be maintained. Actually, the parcel that is proposed to be conveyed, the shape of it, the size of it was not the genesis, it was what was proposed to us to purchase. And so I'm happy with the size of it, the 3.4, it works for us. But again, any trails and public access will be maintained with the exception of, a 1 acre or so piece around the house, which will be probably a private residence or writers in residence, something like that.
Nobody's probably really interested, just maybe curious of the house. Really, it's more this
Yes.
shoreline that I'm interested in, to continue to go to.
Absolutely.
Without being told I can't be there.
Yes. No, our goal would be to keep that entire trail all around the perimeter open at all times for visitors.
Okay, and is there going to be any point in time where we won't be able to go there?
Not to know, that would not be my intention.
Okay, all right. I like the idea, and I'm not a rep, so I don't really count, but I really would like to know that I can go here.
You rep should listen.
So, yeah. Sounds good to me. I know there's a lot of locust trees around that property.
Yeah.
And they're an invasive species. I'd love to.
I would love to get rid of them as well, so,
Okay.
yes.
What I'm saying is I'm available to, I'm also a wetland consultant,
Oh,
know about
excellent.
invasive species, so I'm available to.
That would be great.
For any help if you're interested.
Good.
Now, yeah, my question is for Chris. So I believe it counted 7 times now in the short span that you have reiterated that this and that will affect the appraisal value. So that being said by you, so say the appraisal comes in at 500,000. I'm just throwing it numeric, whatever. Just saying.
It certainly will not.
I'm just giving an even number. Okay, then say 100,000. Let's just make it even number. Okay?
All right, so
So if it comes in at 100,000, how do you mean that the fact that it's going to be land conservation still, how will that affect the property value? Can you explain that?
Oh, I
You
think
just
it's
said that,
addressed, so the appraisal value is based on what they could potentially sell it for to somebody else in the future.
Right.
And if there's an agreement that you can never develop it, it's not worth as much to a developer.
Right,
So
but the
price
whole point of this
is
is to not ever be developed, so how can it affect it?
that makes it a lower price because you can't develop it.
I understand that.
So
So what I'm asking you is this. We all know in this room it's not going to be sold for development. And if that is the case, then why are we selling ourselves short in the town of Lee to give this up as our portion? Okay? Because we already know it's not going to be developed.
So for example.
Why would it change?
So for example, maintaining a right of first refusal. Customary right of first refusal is 120 days. The inability to turn a property for an owner.
I asked the conservation one, not the right of refusal.
Well, I mean, there's a number of things. So if we were to take this attempt to take this out of Article 97, if the legislature would vote by a 2/3 vote, and if we had substitutional land, which we happen to do, if we were to do all of those things, then it could potentially be developed. There's a lot of ifs in that, but you know, the value of not having a conservation restriction on it would increase. But you know, it's speculative at best.
And these aren't all my own questions. I had people call me
Sure.
and ask me as a district rep.
No, that's fine, and we certainly want to get
Call it a
folks
mini
as
town meeting.
comfortable as we can.
And then, okay, so Sue, you just said that you were approached with the purchase of the 3.4 acres. So who approached you to purchase it as Edith Wharton?
I don't know the discussions that went into how they arrived at 3.5. Some of it had to do with.
There was a previous town meeting vote many years ago, I think, in Lee. Keep in mind,
Yeah.
there's multiple complicating factors here. One of which is this whole parcel, lots 1 and 2, that you see on this map are jointly owned by the two towns.
Right.
So the two towns have to agree. There has to be substitutionary land, which at this snapshot in time, there are 4 acres in Lennox that would be used for substitutionary. We're not asking to take land off the property tax rolls in Lee to accomplish this transaction. So there's sort of multiple things going on. One of those is that, you know, many years ago, I think I've forgotten the year, but the Lee town meeting authorized the selectmen to dispose of the property.
As it was a burden?
Do you
recall that?
It was, I think, it was back in the 70s or 80s.
Oh, no, it was more recent than that.
Oh, it was more recent.
That was when
My
Bob was
mistake.
here. And I
Oh.
believe that was Bob's thought that we
But
could sell.
there's no similar vote in Lennox.
Right, we can't just
We can't do
unilaterally get rid of this joint property. Yeah.
So the selectmen, and I agree with this, are going to go back to town meeting to try and facilitate this sale as opposed to the one that had already been authorized.
I'm just trying to understand the history of it, the origin of it, as the conversation I had with you on the phone, and you, so to me, that you were approached. I just found it puzzling that someone would approach Edith Wharton, as you would have probably thought of this on your own whenever. But why would somebody approach you? What is the benefit to Lennox for Edith Wharton to hold this property? What is the benefit to Lee for Edith Wharton to hold this property for us, instead of us holding it ourselves?
I mean, I will stick my neck out a little bit and suggest that neither the town nor of Lee nor Lennox, as shown by their history, would be willing to put the type of investment that would be needed for this structure to be rehabilitated. The Mount is willing to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You had the bullseye.
but I think that's but I think that's the answer. I think that's the answer. I don't think, I could be wrong, I don't think I'm wrong. I don't think Lee or Lennox will put the kind of taxpayer dollars into this project that would be required.
I don't know.
The Mound is willing to do that.
Yeah, and in 2012, when the vote did not go through in Lennox, at that point in time, I think Lee is responsible for the Lee side for maintenance, Lennox is responsible for the Lennox side. They stopped mowing and doing the tree care, which is why we have all the locusts. They are all volunteers that's sprung up for the most part since 2012. And so what is being conveyed here is what has basically not received the care that it should have over the past.
Peggy, did you have a question?
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, I think the house probably too for the Edith Wharton estate was where she and Teddy, yes, the infamous Teddy lived. So I think historically it would, it just would be another, well, a lovely thing for everyone, but even for people that love Edith Wharton or like to read about her, to go and see the house, say for me, would be very, very interesting for that.
Would it be open to just anybody who wanted to tour it, or is it specifically just for the residents, the writers and residents?
It probably would serve much more of a residential purpose. I mean, we do have to be mindful of our other neighbors on that street.
Right.
So I think not a high likelihood that it would be open for tours at this point, but again, all of that remains to be worked out.
And I'm just trying to understand and ask questions that were asked me to bring it to here.
Yeah.
Just to understand.
I just wanted to say, after all these years of loving the lake, starting from when I was this high, and all of that, and being involved with the beach, I just love that place with all my heart, and I feel as though this is the deal of the century. We've got to grab onto this. And I thank you also for being supportive, because I know you have at least allowed it to go onto the warrant. And I'd like to hope that all the people in Lee see how visionary this plan is for our town. So please, I thank you.
If I could, I want to thank Dee Dee for saying that, because this really is a unique snapshot in time that we have. We have a willing restorer who is willing to maintain public access to the land and make the investment in the structure. We have substitutionary land from another community coming in that, through a unique set of circumstances, happens to be part of a requirement in another town that doesn't. Anytime you take Article 97 land off the rolls, it has to be substituted. Usually with taxable property, the town of Lee is not being asked to do that at this point in time. There's a number of unique factors that have come together in a way that I think is historic. I mean, certainly not something I've ever seen in my, shorter but getting longer years of public service.
I agree that it's historic, and this is a chance of a lifetime. I believe this.
And my feeling is the same as I think the other two board members too. Anything that helps Lennox and helps bring tourist information to this community is going to help Lee in the long run. And make that property so much more pleasant. And, Monica?
Yes. I'd like to have a mic, I always feel like it's good for the people at home to hear what we have to say. So Monica Ryan, District 6, also a member of the Mount for transparency.
Is there a conflict there?
Proud member, and I just want to thank Susan and the Mount for all the great things that you give the Berkshires. Think about the fact that last year during COVID-19, Mount was one of the few places that allowed their exterior properties to be open for free for people to get out into nature, when other places, large venues were not allowing that to happen. So I thank you for that. And the fact that it's dog friendly, I love too. And this is a big dog park too. So, and the fact that we can continue to use it and it'll be in perpetuity, I think it's a win-win. I would love it to happen and that the house will get taken care of. I know there was a septic problem, so that's kind of why we didn't pursue doing it ourselves. There'd be a lot of money. So I can't think of anything wrong with it, and I think it would enhance our neighbors and our neighborhoods, and you know, it's historic. It's everything. So I love it. It's a wonderful idea. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that.
So that'll be on town meeting, and you've now gotten a little overview of what's going on. If you have more questions, you can call our office.
I should get your name so we can talk more about it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan.
Oh, we're going to continue with the town administrator's portion of the meeting.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe just give it another minute.
Yeah.
Let the excitement. All right, so, Madam Chair, members of the board, we have before you a request to appoint Hunter Russo as a patrolman in the Lennox Police Department, or the Lee Police Department.
It's like, I'm not sure we can appoint the Olympics.
Fair enough. It happens more often than you think. Yes, if we could have a conversation. So the appointment for you after consulting with Chief DeSantis and having interviewed Mr. Russo, I'm bringing before the board a internal promotion of Mr. Russo from a reserve officer to that of a patrolman in the Lee PD. So I think many of you are familiar with his background. You know, he's working towards his undergraduate at Westfield State. He is well trained and by all accounts is a respected reserve officer, and in my professional opinion and that of Chief DeSantis, is prepared to assume the role for the vacant position that we currently have of patrolman.
I have no issues at all. On my first, I have a question though. So is he out of college now?
He's still in college, but
how will this affect his training?
he will continue to pursue his degree, and he will be in line for the next academy opportunity.
That's what okay. The only question I have.
I don't have anything, Bob.
Nope.
I'll make a motion to appoint Hunter Russo for full-time patrol officer in the Lee Police Department.
Second it.
Are there any questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Congratulations, welcome Hunter.
And then finally, we have something we do every year throughout this time. It's the last meeting before the close of the fiscal year. Then there's a requirement to approve the salary ranges for positions within the town. There's been these are not the salaries that staff earn. Those are assigned via an experience and merit-based appraisal system. But we do have to establish ranges in order to do what we regard as a competitive range for each position. So I presented that before you. We've shifted the ranges, the min-max range have shifted based on our interim year evaluation of the marketplace. We've shifted with a couple of exceptions, about 5%. Again, these are the ranges themselves. This is not what people actually get.
They get somewhere in between.
What they get falls within the range. But this is a big year. We're going into a big year for us where we're going to be doing the full reevaluation of the classification system I think Neil's going to help with that over the course of the next year. So this is I think this is the third and final year of an interim adjustment with a full reevaluation and classification to come in the next 12 months.
So this is what we'll vote on as a classification at town meeting?
No.
No.
That was the board, this is a board vote.
Oh, the board vote, but your not workers' compensation, your compensation reserve will include whatever you have to cover.
Actually, no, this is with the exception of the COLA, which we'll talk about at some other point.
Okay.
The budgets are built.
Are built around
with the current salaries. And then we'll be looking at COLA and adjustments, the way we do it at different points in time throughout the year.
Right.
This is just a change in the range.
Okay, we don't have this last year's.
For comparison.
For comparison.
Yeah,
So you said it was a 5% increase?
5% with, I think there's 2 exceptions to that. Mostly because folks are maxing out.
Okay. For sure. I'll question that.
Okay.
So we have to accept this?
Yeah, I mean, it would be just a motion to approve the classification schedule as
Yeah,
presented.
I would make a motion to approve the classification compensation schedule as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chris.
I gotta find my cover page, my agenda. So I got one written, but I wrote on it, so. Here we go. No, there we go. I think it's this one. So just a couple things. Our next regular, public comments. Kathy?
Come on up, Kathy.
While I was thanking people for helping us on Saturday, I would like to also thank the police department for helping us make sure that the athletic field is safe. They are wonderful about checking the cameras. You know, we have 4 cameras on the field to show different aspects. And if there's a problem, I call, and they're very willing to check out the cameras because now it's set up directly to the police department. So I'd like to thank them for helping us out to keep that field nice. Thank you.
All right, so our next regular meeting is July 6th, which will be after town meeting. Just reminding everybody, town meeting is June 24th outside the high school at 5 p.m. Just in case somebody gets mixed up with the time and the date. I wanted to say thank you to all the people who helped you out at the Marble Street play. You already took care of that. So on behalf of the board, I want to say congratulations to all our graduates this year from the high school. And we'd also just like to send our condolences to the Zabato family, Zippy and his brother, for the loss of their mother. And I guess I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.